Are socially vulnerable populations contributing towards EMS burnout? When we think about EMS personnel, we like to think of them within the context of being first responders as being the best of what our society has to offer, in that we produce these individuals to be there for our society when the individuals of our society experience a healthcare event outside of a clinical environment. But here's the thing, the early impetus for EMS and the white paper, our origin story, couldn't perceive what EMS would look like today. EMS today has an overwhelming responsibility to people who have fallen through the cracks, to vulnerable populations, and we become a social safety net. But the overwhelming majority of our education and training has almost nothing to do with how to care for socially vulnerable patients. And what we mean by socially vulnerable patients, patients who are mentally ill, patients who have been neglected, patients who are marginalized, people who have lost the ability to care for themselves. And that in and of itself is a wide spectrum of patients. This is a paper that examined the relationship between the frequency in EMS of taking care of socially vulnerable patients and the potential for burnout. Instead of crunching numbers, I'm just going to get into the conclusion. The conclusion states that there is a positive association between EMS having a frequency of taking care of socially vulnerable patients and their level of burnout, and that this was intensified by a high critical call workload. Taking care of socially vulnerable patients is a skill set that is a very specific and deep reservoir. This is not something that is built and filled within the initial EMS education, and it's not something that is replenished post-licensure. So when EMS personnel are frequently responding to socially vulnerable patients, and 98% of us are, we find that reserve, that reservoir isn't there, and we end up very quickly in an emotional deficit. Compassion fatigue is one of the most significant challenges that EMS faces today. And without addressing this, what ends up happening is that every single person in EMS has the potential to be put on a pathway where at the end of that pathway, they themselves suffer from mental injury and end up becoming part of a vulnerable population. Link to the paper in my bio, and remember that saving lives begins with kindness.